দর্শক আমন্ত্রণ RTV নিয়মিত আলোচনা অনুষ্ঠান ফোর্থরাইটে। এই অনুষ্ঠানে আমরা কথা বলি বিভিন্ন সেক্টরের বিশেষজ্ঞদের সাথে, যারা বাংলাদেশ নিয়ে ভবিষ্যৎ পরিকল্পনা ও তাদের অভিজ্ঞতা নিয়ে আলোচনা করেন। দর্শক, অন্যরকম এক সময়ে এখন আছি আমরা। কোভিড-19 মহামারী ছড়িয়ে পড়েছে সারা বিশ্বে দাবানলের মতো। জীবন ও জীবিকা উভয়ই আজ ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত, জীবনযাপনও আজ অনেকটাই পরিবর্তিত। এরই মধ্যে অন্যরকম জটিলতার মুখে রয়েছে বাংলাদেশে আশ্রয় নেয়া রোহিঙ্গারা। এসব নিয়ে কথা বলবো আজকের ফোর্থরাইট অনুষ্ঠানে। আপনাদের সঙ্গে আছি আমি সৈয়দ আশিক রহমান। আজকের বিষয় দ্য রোহিঙ্গা ক্রাইসিস ডিউরিং কোভিড-19 প্যান্ডামিক। আর এই বিষয়ে আলোচনার জন্য আজ আমাদের সঙ্গে যুক্ত হয়েছেন গণপ্রজাতন্ত্রী বাংলাদেশ সরকারের মাননীয় পররাষ্ট্রমন্ত্রী ডক্টর এ কে আব্দুল মোমিন এমপি, বাংলাদেশে কানাডার রাষ্ট্রদূত হিজ এক্সেলেন্সি বেনোয়া প্রিফন্টাইন, ব্রিটিশ সাহায্য সংস্থা DFAIDর বাংলাদেশ মিশন প্রধান মিস জুডিথ হারফেনস্টাইন এবং জাতিসংঘের শরণার্থী বিষয়ক সংস্থা UNHCR এর কান্ট্রি রিপ্রেজেন্টেটিভ মিস্টার স্টিভ কর্লিস। Thank you very much all of you for joining with us. Firstly, I would like to start with Mr. Steve. Mr. Steve, the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh have fled persecution in Myanmar and such mistreatment towards Rohingya go back 2 years. Why hasn't there been a change until now?
Well, let me speak globally first. People don't become refugees by choice. They become refugees when they cannot be safe, enjoy basic rights, and feel included in a national society or in the communities where they're living. So these are the fundamental issues of governance and human rights that are at the heart of finding solutions for refugees everywhere. And of course, coming from UNHCR, I am focused on the protection of the Rohingya in Bangladesh, trying to help them stay safely and live decently. But just as importantly, we're focusing on finding solutions. And the solution for the Rohingya, of course, is return to Myanmar. And I do have colleagues working along with other UN agencies and NGOs every day in northern Rakhine State, in Mongdal, in Sitwe, and they're focusing their efforts on making it possible for the Rohingya to return home again. But you can imagine how challenging that is. We made a very early decision as UNHCR to focus on returns. This was a bit unusual in terms of the speed. Really, the wounds of 2017 were still fresh, I think, both figuratively and physically. But we wanted to make sure that we preserve the right of the Rohingya to go home and to move as quickly as we could to create the conditions for return. So UNDP and UNHCR, the United Nations Development Program, we have an agreement with the government of Myanmar. That agreement is to support all the communities in Rakhine State and create conditions for the refugees to go home. But I'm going to be honest with you, progress on implementing that agreement has been slow. I would say slow but steady. It allows us to work in communities, to meet people, to understand how they see the future and what it will take to make it possible for the two communities to live together again. And we've proposed 115 quick impact projects. Most of them are underway or have been completed. And these focus on very concrete activities: repairing schools, repairing water systems, building community facilities, infrastructure development, income generating activities that help all the communities. But we face a lot of challenges. I think your viewers will know there is an armed conflict that's ongoing in Rakhine State, and this limits our ability to work and to have access. Plus, the COVID-19 pandemic has really also put other constraints on us.
Ms. Judith, it is said that Rohingya community is larger than the total population of Bhutan. What Bangladesh should do until repatriation? How does British government may work with Bangladesh on these issues?
Thank you. First of all, I should say the UK really welcomes Bangladesh's continued accommodation of the Rohingya refugees in what is now the largest refugee settlement in the world. And we remain fully committed to partnering with the government on funding and policy issues to support the Rohingya until they can go home. We know that the Rohingya themselves also appreciate the generosity of the government and the Bangladeshi people, but do want to go home to Myanmar. And the UK and Bangladesh both agree that repatriation should be voluntary, dignified and safe. But currently, the conditions in Rakhine are not yet conducive for returns due to the ongoing conflict and indeed the marginalisation of the Rohingya that remain there. And we need to plan for both long-term support and solutions down in the Cox's Bazar district, but at the same time working to hold Myanmar accountable and to improve conditions in Rakhine. And we need to show solidarity with the government of Bangladesh for their exceptional generosity and re-emphasize the fact that the humanitarian response has saved and improved many lives since August 2017 because of that generosity. The UK has contributed £256 million since then to support the provision of essential services, be that food and nutrition, shelter, health, education, protection, water and sanitation, and a particular focus on the traumatised women and girls. And our support has also focused on supporting those vulnerable host communities in Cox's Bazar. And of course, most recently, we've had to readapt our support to fight the COVID-19 crisis. Is really second to none. And we need to take a holistic approach which maintains both the essential services, but also addresses the environmental and socio-economic impacts of the crisis on the district. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Excellency Mr. Benmar Prefontaine, countries like Canada and the Netherlands are besides Bangladesh on Rohingya issues. Do you feel that Myanmar will implement its commitment to take back the Rohingya?
Absolutely. Canada and several other countries of the international community are determined to make sure that the Rohingya can return home. You know, it's difficult to predict how much time this will come, but our country, since 2017, immediately put in place a 3-year plan because we didn't think the conditions required for the return of the Rohingya would happen soon. So $300 million over 3 years. This is coming to an end. So now we're looking at our next plan. But absolutely, we do not want to let the Rohingya and what happened to them be forgotten. What a sad precedent this would be for any other country where there is ethnic cleansing, where there is genocide. I think it's a responsibility for the international community. And I would simply add that I'm not a Myanmar expert, but I can assure you that Canadian diplomacy, my colleagues in Myanmar, across ASEAN countries, we are all working towards trying to find ways to make this happen. And the last thing we want is to see any country lose hope.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Benmar. Honorable Minister, you have tried for cooperation of neighboring countries and the United Nations in repatriating the Rohingyas. How much optimistic you are? How does Bangladesh government work on Rohingya camp during COVID pandemic?
Yeah, I'm always optimistic. And I have reason to be optimistic because in Bangladesh, even earlier, 1978, 1992, there have been influx of Rohingya from Myanmar. In 1992, around 253,000 Rohingya, came to Bangladesh. But through dialogue and discussion, Myanmar took most of them, around 230,000. So we have the precedents, we have examples that through dialogue and discussion, we can resolve this issue. Myanmar is not our enemy. They're a friendly country. We have been supportive of them during their difficult times. But of late, we got a huge number, currently 1.1 million of them. Thanks to our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, when they were being persecuted, they are being uprooted from their homes, and in a miserable state, Sheikh Hasina, the mother of humanity, gave them shelter. And Myanmar agreed, all of you know, Myanmar agreed to take them back. We only wanted that when they take them back, they must, give guarantee of the safety and security and the dignified living. And the other thing we wanted, for repatriation, Myanmar should create a conducive environment so that these persecuted people can return home willingly, voluntarily. So these are the agreements we made. We have signed around 3 agreements. And here with as Steve has already said, they're also working on that. So we are hopeful, but Myanmar comes up almost 3 years now. Myanmar always comes up with one or another excuses. And it is true, right now when we are talking, there is war going on in the Rakhine province, Rakhine and Chin province. Right now, there have been shelling, there have been air bombing, people are getting killed, and now, not Rohingya, now it is the Rakhine ethnic community, they are being uprooted from their homes. So Myanmar has not done much to help improve the environment for their safe return.
Thank you very much. We'll talk more after a short break. দর্শক দেখছেন RTV নিয়মিত আলোচনা অনুষ্ঠান ForthRight। এই পর্যায়ে নিচ্ছি বিরতি, ফিরছি একটু পরেই। সে পর্যন্ত আমাদের সাথেই থাকুন। দর্শক আবারও আমন্ত্রণ ForthRight অনুষ্ঠানে। আজকে কথা বলছিলাম দ্য রোহিঙ্গা ক্রাইসিস ডিউরিং COVID-19 প্যান্ডেমিক নিয়ে। Welcome again all of you at ForthRight. Mr. Steve, there have been huge activities ongoing in the camps and also in adjacent places of a local community. Massive efforts are in place coordinating with government authorities, which has resulted in limited, very low transmission of COVID-19 in the refugee camps. Can you please elaborate?
Thank you very much. I would answer first with one word: teamwork. We work as a team with the Refugee Relief and Repatriation Commissioner and his camp in charge officers, with the Deputy Commissioner, with the Civil Surgeon, with the police, with the Army, with 9 UN agencies and 120 NGOs on the ground every day, working for both the Bangladeshis, the Rohingya refugees, and the Bangladeshis living nearby. This is a public health emergency, so the virus doesn't discriminate. It doesn't ask you whether you're a Rohingya or a Bangladeshi. And the government took very decisive action, the RRRC, the Refugee Relief and Repatriation Commissioner, on the 8th of April to reduce humanitarian operations to critical activities only. So healthcare, nutrition, food assistance, clean water, sanitation, and hygiene. And the move to critical activities reduced the contact between people outside the camp and people inside the camp. So our own humanitarian team was reduced by 80%. And in this way, we were able to slow the entry and spread of the virus. So this gave us a window of opportunity. And together, the government, the NGOs, the UN, we reacted very quickly and we capitalized on that to build new health facilities, severe acute respiratory infection, isolation and treatment centers, quarantine facilities, the first intensive care unit in Cox's Bazar district. And so far, these facilities have treated mainly Bangladeshis. Now we're in a marathon. And we all must remain very focused and not complacent, because it could come that the worst of the pandemic is ahead of us, and we have to be prepared for that and keep up our pace. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, Excellency Mr. Benoit Prefontaine, experts are saying that from the beginning of the Rohingya influx, the international community has stood beside Bangladesh. But the move for repatriation was being made without taking them into cognizance. Why?
I'm not sure I agree with the premise of that question. It's much less an issue of whether the international community was consulted or given a voice. I think in the case of repatriation, it was mostly a case of, are the Rohingya willing? Have they been consulted? Will it work? Are the conditions for a successful repatriation in place according to the Rohingya? Canada and most other countries totally recognize the right of Bangladesh to plan repatriation and seek ways to help the Rohingya return home. And we did not interfere in any way. But as I said earlier, we were skeptical that it was time to do so soon after the Rohingya had left Myanmar. You know, there's two important assets for countries like Canada who are friends of Bangladesh, who want to help Bangladesh and the Rohingya. The first is the fact that Bangladesh consistently is holding the moral high ground in this crisis. Gestures such as the Honorable Foreign Minister mentioning earlier what his Prime Minister has done by allowing the Rohingya in, and various other steps that have been taken place already. This is invaluable for us to mount support, to continue helping. The second asset is what I call the voice of the Rohingya. They deserve to have a voice. they will be key players. Since all of this is voluntary, they need to be involved in a way where they can express their concerns, the requirements that they see as being necessary. And in Canada, we listen a lot to what the Rohingya are trying to express to the international community, recognizing we are not the key decision makers. Bangladesh is the key decision maker.
Well, Honorable Minister, now Bangladesh is faced with an unprecedented crisis. Though there are lots of limitations, how does Bangladesh government control Rohingya camp during COVID-19?
We have been doing pretty well, I should say. From the day one, we have been trying to create an environment so that the infection could be reduced. And till today, if you see the results is really good. And we take it as a whole, issues not for one segment or the other. We take protective measures so that this COVID-19 do not affect us. It has two parts. One is the infection and death, fatalities. The other one is, to protect the economy. And we are very concerned about both the issues. UK, for example, Judith will share with me. Yes. They have 67 million people, but they have more than 45,000 deaths by now. Or if I look at USA, which has all the modern equipment, the best doctors and facilities, we don't have those. We have so much weaknesses. Yet, look at US. It's a staggering number. Their population is double of us, around 330 million. But that is 140 plus thousand of Americans. So if you look at the overall, we are doing well, in spite of our variety of the weaknesses and
limitations.
Even in the case of Rohingya area, we were afraid in two areas. Our Basti, the slum area, and also the Rohingya camps. These are very heavily congested, and their nutrition intake is relatively low, and the living, is not as good as the others. So we were very much concerned. But thanks God, in both the area, with the support of, we work as a team. In the Rohingya area, we work as a team from the very beginning, and we imposed many restrictions. We didn't allow many of the agencies to take their friends inside the camps. In the process, thanks God, the number of infections and fatalities is, I should say, remarkably low. So far, we are doing very well.
Thank you very much. Ms. Judith, British government has imposed sanctions on 2 Myanmar generals for human rights abuse against the Rohingya people and other ethnic minorities. Do you think these steps is enough to pressure the military leaders of Myanmar? And also, do you think other countries should also pressure Myanmar as well?
We're very clear that this Rohingya crisis was created in Myanmar by the Tatmadaws' disproportionate response to attacks by the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Organization in 2017, and that the solution remains there. And the international community has a responsibility to shine a light on human rights violations and to hold alleged perpetrators to true atrocities committed by the Myanmar military against the Rohingya people. Sanctions are just one way of providing accountability. The UK's global human rights sanctions regime will provide accountability and may help deter others from committing atrocities. And it targets individuals who commit serious human rights violations or abuses anywhere in the world. We are also one of the first countries to formally suspend defence engagement and cooperation with the military in Myanmar. And it also is an additional step taken in parallel with diplomatic lobbying. We've ceased training for the Myanmar military, as well as supporting discussions at the UN Security Council and the Human Rights Council.
Thank you, Ms. Judith. দর্শক দেখছেন RTV নিয়মিত আলোচনা অনুষ্ঠান ForthRight। এই পর্যায়ে নিচ্ছি বিরতি, ফিরছি একটু পরেই। সে পর্যন্ত আমাদের সাথেই থাকুন। দর্শক আবারও আমন্ত্রণ ForthRight অনুষ্ঠানে। আজকে কথা বলছিলাম দ্য রোহিঙ্গা ক্রাইসিস ডিউরিং COVID-19 প্যান্ডেমিক নিয়ে। Welcome again, all of you at ForthRight. Honorable Minister Abdul Momen, it's an honor to know that the daughter of Honorable Prime Minister Ms. Saima Wajed Hossain has elected as Ambassador of Climate Vulnerable Forum. Can you please elaborate its role?
Of course, you see, there we were very lucky that we got a person like, Saima Wajid Hussain, who has earned a great name. Particularly, I worked with her. I remember in the early 2009, I was concerned about this altruism. And then Saima came up to me, and our issues got together. But she was the spirit, because I may not be able to reach so many heads of government or the spouses of heads of government. Because of her position, she could reach all across the globe. And I was lucky to pass a resolution in the UN on altruism and other disabilities in 2012, was overwhelming with consensus.
Well,
Saima has a track record of achieving goals. Currently, as you know, Bangladesh has become the president of the Climate Vulnerable Forum.
Exactly.
It's a forum of 48 most climatically vulnerable countries. And in COP26, we would like to, impress upon the global leadership to do better things for the climate. We have been talking about it for years. Not much is being achieved. So what we want, when in the COP26, we want to have a big voice so that, we follow through the Paris Agreement, particularly nationally determined contributions. Those should be aggressively achieved so that we can have 1.5 degrees centigrade. So only government cannot do. We need other stakeholders, public opinion builder. We all have to work together in partnership, in collaboration to handle this issue. By the way, I would like to thank, Binoy, because from the day one in my Rohingya, the Bob Ray has been a great support for us. Thank you, Canada.
Exactly.
And I must, of course, the UN organizations from day one have been most vocal on the issue of, the Rohingya.
This Rohingya crisis.
And I must also tell you, we have taken varieties of initiatives to resolve this problem. We have taken multilateral, we have taken bilateral, we have taken trilateral approaches. We went even in the judicial system. And of course, we involve every step of the way the UN and its system organization.
British and Canadian partners is here. Would you please want to add something? Excellency Benma?
Yes, well, thank you very much. The Honorable Minister is very kind. But, the bottom line is that there is tremendous sympathy for Bangladesh. And there has been for a long time in my country, and I think in many other countries. And when the Rohingya crisis began, or a new chapter of the crisis began to unfold in 2017, there was a lot of pressure on my High Commission here in Bangladesh, but also on my Prime Minister, on my ministers, on the whole government of Canada to do something. And so, we are very committed to remain here, remain engaged. We have done so many things with this is
right.
Clearly a big foreign policy priority for the government of Canada. And, we have been active in so many fora to try to get some buy-in and some movement to help Bangladesh. So I was telling you earlier that we will not give up, and we are serious about that.
Exactly.
And one of the reasons for that is because we really appreciate and care about what Bangladesh is going through, what they have done today. It's exemplary.
Thank you.
And you can count on a lot of other countries having the same position as Canada.
Thank you very much. Ms. Judith, you have to add something.
Thank you very much. I would just endorse what the High Commissioner from Canada has said. Interestingly, our current Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, in fact, visited Bangladesh when he was Foreign Secretary in February 2018, and he met the Honourable Prime Minister, he met your predecessor, sir, and visited the refugee camps in Cox's Bazar. And he paid tribute then to the hospitality and the compassion shown by the government of Bangladesh, and acknowledged the enormous challenge in providing this assistance. And our government's position has not changed since his visit as Foreign Secretary in 2018. Our recent visit by our Department for International Development Secretary of State, a virtual visit, also met with you, sir, Honourable Minister, and she expressed her gratitude, but also committed our absolute full support going forward for partnering with the government of Bangladesh, with the UN and with our other development and diplomatic colleagues, both to provide ongoing humanitarian support to the refugees and to those Bangladeshis living in Cox's Bazar district, but also working through the political track that I mentioned earlier to try to hold Myanmar to account and to try to create the conditions for returns, although we know that is going to take time.
Exactly. Excellency Mr. Benoit Prefontaine, according to the ICJ order, Myanmar submitted its report to the court after trial, though the contents of the report have not been made public as yet. Canadian Prime Minister's Special Envoy Mr. Bob Rae also argued. What is Canadian government stance?
Well, the Canadian government is very clear. We strongly support any mechanism that can help make Myanmar leaders who had any role to play with what happened in August 2017 to make them accountable. So regarding the ICJ ruling, our government had, before the ruling, already publicly announced that we support the Gambia and have been doing everything we can to help the Gambia put forward its case. And since the ruling, my Minister of Foreign Affairs has urged Myanmar to comply with all the recommendations. I do not know what the Myanmar response was, but we will continue to focus on this mechanism and all the others to try to ensure that Myanmar has no choice but to begin complying and accepting the recommendations coming from various jurisdictions. They have to bring about some change in Myanmar.
Exactly.
And as I said, accountability for us is a key pillar of our whole strategy. The British High Commission representative was just mentioning the sanctions, the various mechanisms they have put in place. Canada is doing the same at all levels. We have a long list of Myanmar generals and leaders and also companies who are under sanction, who cannot go to Canada, whose assets are all frozen. We have suspended almost everything with Myanmar, except in areas where we think it will help bring about positive change in Myanmar, in changing public opinion and making the country more receptive to the Rohingya.
Well, thank you very much. It's another time to take break. Honorable Minister and Excellency, we will talk more after a short break. দর্শক দেখছেন RTV নিয়মিত আলোচনা অনুষ্ঠান ForthRight। এই পর্যায়ে নিচ্ছি বিরতি, ফিরছি একটু পরেই। সে পর্যন্ত আমাদের সাথেই থাকুন। দর্শক আবার আমন্ত্রণ ForthRight অনুষ্ঠানে। আজকে কথা বলছিলাম দ্য রোহিঙ্গা ক্রাইসিস ডিউরিং COVID-19 প্যান্ডেমিক নিয়ে। Honorable Minister, the UN humanitarian chief warned that failing to help vulnerable countries fight the coronavirus now could place millions at risk. How does Bangladesh government taking preparation on this crisis?
Bangladesh has taken a leading role in the area of fighting coronavirus, not only within the country, but because we believe this is a problem which has to be, handled globally with partnership and with collaboration. No wonder, even when this is the first time in the history when Bangladesh joined the European Union in a fund to provide fund. Bangladesh provided some fund to the European Union with two objectives. One, to develop the vaccine as early as possible, help developing the vaccine. And more importantly, which is very, very close to our heart, is that when the vaccine will be developed, it should be, it should be affordable and should be available to all the countries. There must not be any discrimination in the availability of that particular, vaccine. So we are taking care of it. And we also want that in the program, no one should be left behind. even the poor of the poorest,
Right.
they should be taken care of for helping them. In Bangladesh also, as you see, we have taken a very serious issue. Because understanding that people cannot pay for it, in our country, we by and large provided all the infection, this testing mechanism free. You go to any government agency, you can. My friend in Austria was saying it cost them €160 just to get the test. But here, for understanding the common people, because our people are not rich, neither that, they can afford. So we have been working. Now, even the medicine that we are providing, whatever we have, so far we do it basically free, except, of course, the private hospitals. Private hospital is different, but for the otherwise, we provide all services. This is a humanitarian gesture of Bangladesh.
Well,
And the other important thing we did from day one, we know when we have lockout. When we have lockout, naturally, the common people cannot go out and earn some living. They cannot have income. So Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, from day one, decided that she will provide the essentials of life, food, these things, to every people in the country. So mobilize resources, mobilize human resources too, to go to door and provide the essential food, the dentals, all those things. That's essential. And also the party people were mobilized to provide on a philanthropic basis and did an excellent job. In addition, the government provided cash help to around 5 million households. So in the process, if you see no one die of hunger, no one is short. Of course, it's always we have shortage vis-a-vis other relative to other countries, but no one is making any noise because food, medicine, and other essentials, they're getting it. Now we have to think that how long we can provide it free. So we have started our operations. Right now, people are working, and because these communities are earning their income, and hopefully and also Corona has more or less stabilized. So our hope is we will be out of it by the end of August, and the process we have started.
We also hope so, Honorable Minister. Well, Ms. Judith, less than 3 years since a crackdown against Rohingya Muslim community in Rakhine State, a campaign of violence that has since led to a genocide case in the UN's highest court. The Myanmar military is again accused of war crimes against Rakhine's Buddhists. What is your opinion?
The UK is deeply concerned by this escalation of violence in Rakhine and Chin states between the Arakan army and the Myanmar military. The violence is affecting all the communities there, including the Rohingya. And we understand there's been an increase in both civilian casualties and population displacement. And we're very concerned that the military may be again using some of the violence and intimidation tactics it deployed against the Rohingya in both 2016 and 2017. And we continue to call for an end to fighting to protect civilians. In the midst of a global pandemic, a ceasefire is increasingly important to ensure that vital humanitarian assistance can be delivered and reinforce this resilience against COVID-19. As the Honourable Minister said, this is a global pandemic. It doesn't respect borders. And we continue to call for an end to fighting and for a political dialogue to protect civilians and explore a sustainable solution for peace. Until all the armed personnel and the civilian government are able to engage in dialogue, civilians will continue to bear the brunt of the conflict in Rakhine and Chin states.
Well, Mr. Steve, UNHCR, other UN agencies and all humanitarian organizations working for the Rohingya response have also been working for the local community of Cox's Bazar from the very beginning. What are the progress of these works?
Thank you very much for that question. You know, the Honorable Foreign Minister said that the UN was there on day one. But I think we have to recognize that who was really there on day one were the people of Cox's Bazar district. They opened their homes. The poorest people of Bangladesh opened their homes, shared the food that they had, and they showed the Rohingya people the first glimpse that humanity still existed and that people cared. So I think we owe them a debt of gratitude. We owe a debt of gratitude, first of all, in working for solutions as hard as we can so that the Rohingya can be good neighbors across the border in Myanmar. But also we owe them a debt of gratitude to correct some of the damage that's been inflicted on Cox's Bazar district. And there have been considerable impacts of the refugee presence on natural resources, on land, on water, on forests, and we have to recognize this. I think we've managed to reverse some of that damage. All Rohingya refugees and many, many local people now receive LPG, liquefied petroleum gas. So the cutting of firewood has stopped. The greening of the hills has come back to some extent. I can also say the humanitarian operation is quite a big thing. It has created many thousands of jobs directly, and also through the procurement that takes place, the purchases of daily necessities by humanitarian workers, but not everyone benefits. And the poorest Bangladeshis, they see prices rising, they see opportunities for daily labor decreasing. That's what we have to address. And so the government, the UN, and the donors have addressed that. And we see, according to our calculations, commitments of about $970 million in development funding. So this is beyond what's coming through the humanitarian operation, and that's about $600 million a year. But a total of about almost $1 billion in additional funding is coming to Cox's Bazar district. Let me also add that in terms of the COVID-19 response, we have just issued an appeal from the interagency community seeking an additional $181 million. That's for those activities I mentioned before, the health facilities. But we have added, before the program focused mainly on Ukya and Teknaf upazilas. Now the program will focus on the other upazilas of Cox's Bazar district. We've added actually 509,000 Bangladeshis into the target population, over 500,000. And the kind of activities that we'll be implementing there are to implement the government's own social safety net program, distributing food, cash assistance, agricultural implements, seeds and tools, so that people can survive but also recover their livelihoods. So I think we see a difficult period ahead still for the pandemic, but as long as all of us in our own lives, we reach out to the vulnerable people, the Bangladeshis and the Rohingya, it'll be important so that we can continue projecting that positive image of teamwork in Bangladesh between the government, the UN, the NGOs and the donors on behalf of the Rohingya, but also the Bangladeshis living nearby. That's the positive story that we would like to tell.
Exactly. Teamwork is very important, and that is all success if we can make the proper teamwork. Thank you very much. Thank you very much all for joining with us.
Before I finish,
yes,
if you allow me, I have one issue.
Please.
Okay.
Most of
you see this, we got international support. Many countries have been supporting us. But yet, not a single Rohingya has gone back. And Myanmar has not created conducive environment. In 1992, when we had the difficulty, there has been sanction on Myanmar. Currently, thanks to British, thanks to Americans, the Canadians, they have been supporting us. They are putting some sanctions on Myanmar leaders, but not on the economy as such. Because over the last few years, I just looked at the numbers from 2012 to 2015 or 16, and then after the massacre, after the persecution. Since the persecution, the trade of most of the countries, even the European Union, the stalwart of human rights, has gone up from 3 to 11 times. You see, 11 times. Even the British trade has gone up to around 10.5%. So in the process, you are not putting pressure. Myanmar needs some pressure on them, some economic pressure. The global community is not doing enough. When they must come forward with some pressure on Myanmar so that they comply the promises they have made, and they take back their own people back to their home.
The promises every time, but not doing anything.
So many young kids, they are without school. This is a pain to us. And these people can have better living and better education back in their own land. And everybody should work together so that they go back as fast as possible.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, Excellency, Judith and Steve for joining with us. We really appreciate it for your comments on current Rohingya issues. Hope very soon this crisis will be solved. দর্শক, একটা চ্যালেঞ্জিং সময় পার করছি আমরা। জীবন বাঁচানোর এই যুদ্ধে সবাই যখন লড়ছে, তখন আরেকটি গুরুতর সমস্যা পৃথিবীতে বিদ্যমান, তা হলো শরণার্থী সংকট। গ্লোবাল ট্রেন্ডস ইন ফোর্স ডিসপ্লেসমেন্ট রিপোর্ট বলছে, গেল বছর সারা পৃথিবীতে 7,95,00,000 মানুষ বাস্তুচ্যুত হয়েছে। অর্থাৎ প্রতি 100 জনের একজনের বেশি মানুষ শরণার্থী অথবা নিজ দেশের ভেতর বাস্তুচ্যুত। এই বাস্তবতায় রোহিঙ্গা সমস্যার সমাধান কী হয় তার দিকে তাকিয়ে বিশ্ববাসী। তবে রোহিঙ্গা শরণার্থীর প্রত্যাবাসন হোক স্থায়ী এবং সম্মানের, সেই প্রত্যাশায় শেষ করছি আজকের ফোর্থ রাইট। এতক্ষণ সঙ্গে থাকার জন্য ধন্যবাদ সবাইকে।
For more updates, subscribe and press the bell icon on YouTube app and never miss another update.